This goes to the very core of what it means to have free speech in America.
Last night we saw who are the real enemies, who are the real liars, when the supposedly victims, Jewish students.
I'm genuinely heartened by the protest. I think the use of police in this situation is especially galling, because if the idea is to make to solve this problem peacefully, the last thing I think you would do is call in the NYPD, an organisation that seems almost uniquely suited to escalating violent situations into incredibly violent situations where it needn't be that way.
There is something to be said that just because it's illegal doesn't make it immoral. So saying like, hey, we can take over your buildings, we can smash stuff, we can spray paint stuff, we can shoot fireworks at people, we can beat people up, we can take over your spaces, we can bar Jewish students from attending school, we can interrogate students about whether they're Zionists or not. It's a lie. What part of have I lied about? Let me concede the debate already. Arabs are never violent. Leftist protesters never do anything wrong. There's no violence from your side. There's no extrajudicial procedure.
Hold on. Let me tell you.
This is part of the problem right here.
These students have a message. They don't want nonviolence. They were encampment. They were eating potato chips and things of that nature. You killed them.
Hey, everyone will stop talking when I say to stop talking.
We'll get to that Arab because I'm not going to stand for that, okay?
This is what the dissident right said 5 years ago. I didn't give a then, and I don't give a now. You guys are literally using alt-right playbook bullshit from 5 years ago in order to say there's no problems with your protests.
People who actually use violence were the supposedly victim Jews.
I don't care. So this is another stupid point. This is another stupid point. Everyone they've arrested has been a 60-year-old professor. Or did you find the most weak, feeble, made body that you could on video in order to complain about?
You're the fucking idiot. You dismantled the whole country.
You're the fucking idiot.
It will unleash a power of fucking violence that will last 1,000 years. You dumb idiot. You redneck hickey. Is it hickey or hilly? I don't know how to say it.
It's not a
hillbilly,
but that's hilarious.
How much property damage do you think is reasonable at a protest?
I mean, I sort of don't give that much of a as long as it's not like a structural damage to a building. If it's a bit of graffiti, it can be cleaned off. The idea that the police are going to go in and do less damage is an interesting...
To property?
No, but they probably will brutalise a lot of people and escalate the situation, yeah. If it's the FBI, they might kill them.
When they barricaded themselves in a building, yes, they're coming to arrest them.
So I want you to respect that dicks on balls, all right? You fucking...
I have no problems with your dicks and balls.
Stop! Stop! Oh my God! This has been the worst panel I've hosted in a while. We couldn't even get past go.
Wow. Welcome to the first edition of Debate Review. And what a doozy this first one is going to be. What you just watched were a few highlights from a recent debate hosted by WIC TV on the topic of the recent campus demonstrations and encampments that are meant to do a few things depending on who you ask. On the most basic level, no matter who you ask, these demonstrations are meant to show support for Palestinians. But from there, depending on which university you're looking at and who you talk to, the purpose of these demonstrations also include the basic elements of the BDS movement, which, for those who are unaware, stands for Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, which aims to essentially bleed Israel of international funding through boycotts, sanctions, and divestment initiatives, as is being demanded on many campuses across the country right now by these pro-Palestinian demonstrators. But before getting back to the debate itself, there were two sides represented in this debate. On each side were two content creators, with WIC acting as the moderator. On one side, you had a streamer named Kevin Logan, and another named Omar. On the opposite side, you had Counterpoints, and a creator who goes by Principles Before Politics. Kevin and Omar were Team Protest. Counterpoints and Principles were Team Police. Okay, that's probably not a fair way to describe Counterpoints and Principles' stance, since it's much more nuanced than that. But the point is, you have two very different perspectives being represented here. But nuance is actually a very important element that runs throughout this entire thing, because it's the lack of nuance on the Team Protest side, represented by Kevin and Omar, compared to their debate foes, was very striking. But at the same time, it actually served as a really great representation of the pro-Palestinian campus demonstrators that these two were speaking for throughout this debate. Take, for example, one of Wick's very first questions to his panel about instances of overreactions by the police and the demonstrators. Take a look.
Do you think there has been any police overstep in the responses to the protests?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Go ahead, Connor.
Examples, yeah. From
No,
one of you.
I said no, not yet. So you can tell me the examples.
Oh, sure. Okay. So I want to be clear here because, again, Wick, you were commenting on keeping clear which schools we're talking about. I think it's also important to remember the timeline of events, right? So, and if one of these might have been more or less reasonable based on which campus it was on and when exactly it took place. There were instances of tear gas being used that I thought were overreaches. That you could have used basic riot police to handle that situation. You did not need to go to chemicals. That said, I'm pretty sure I heard about one earlier today, and I don't have the details on that one. And if they were clashing with police, which I've seen plenty of videos of people clashing with police, generally speaking, they outnumber the police. So there's a reason that tear gas is in the toolkit, but I don't think it should have been reached for in the instance.
The first place. Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, the students were peaceful, especially in Colombia. The whole idea is the message. These students have a message. They didn't want nonviolence. They were in camping. They were eating potato chips and things of that nature. There was no anti-Semitism intended. That was just used as weaponized by the forces, the three evil forces in our society: the media, the economic elites, and what's that? What's the other one?
Look,
What is
it's
that?
your
Help me out here.
conspiracy. I
Is
don't
it
know.
banking?
Man.
Huh?
Is it
What is
banking? Media?
No, is the
Is
media,
it Hollywood? Is the third one Hollywood?
Hold on, relax, boy, relax.
Is it the media elites?
It's corporate media, the
Are they
economic
disproportionately
elites.
represented by a certain demographic?
Now, notice how principles and counterpoints both answer the question in a very nuanced way, whereas Kevin and Omar did not. This was a theme, as I said before, that ran throughout the entire debate. But let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture, and the real question that hung over the entire debate, which was, what's actually going on these campuses? Because somehow, despite us all living in an age of unlimited information and cameras everywhere, there are still wildly different interpretations of what's actually been going on. Let's start with the picture painted by Kevin and Omar. In their eyes, the campus demonstrations have been peaceful. The participants are harmless kids who just want to, in the words of Omar, eat potato chips, dance, and have a drum circle here and there. And the idea that there's any legitimate claims of anti-Semitism going on throughout these demonstrations is not true, and really is a false narrative being pushed by media elites and economic elites. And any violence that you may have seen at these demonstrations is the fault of three groups, none of which are the students. First, you have the campus administration, who don't want a peaceful resolution. Then you have cops, who really just want to brutalize demonstrators and do what they do best, which is to just escalate things. And finally, you have Zionist outside agitators. I mean, there is obviously a lot to unpack there, so let's take it one piece at a time. Starting with the idea that the campus demonstrations have been peaceful. The participants are harmless kids who just want to eat potato chips, dance with each other, and have a drum circle. At this point, we should do something that's often darn near impossible to do in the heat of a debate, and that's to fact-check claims being made. And unfortunately for Kevin and Omar, and those who are sympathetic to the broad arguments that they were making and representing, their lack of nuance throughout this debate may have worked in the moment because it allowed them, through the debate, to project confidence. But the fact is, when you're dealing with widespread demonstrations like the ones that have been taking place on college campuses recently, there is always nuance. And the facts just don't support the black and white picture that Kevin and Omar tried to paint. there have, in fact, been widespread and well-documented instances of violence in all forms. And by that I mean physical violence, glorification of violence, incitement of violence, all of this sometimes literal and direct, while other times less direct and coded. In addition to that, we've seen property damage, harassment. Now we're seeing instances of burglary and countless examples of demonstrators expressing support for Hamas and other violent extremists and terrorist groups. And something left out of this debate that I think is really important is that if you look back just a couple years ago, the same people who now roll their eyes at the idea that the widespread use of coded calls for violence and phrases that seem to be, to many, obviously anti-Semitic and quite frightening, the people who now roll their eyes at that are the same people who not long ago, and by that I mean a year or two ago, wanted to turn the whole world upside down over microaggressions and coded language being used on the right, such as the OK sign, and phrases like all lives matter. Likewise, the same people who were chanting silence is violence during the BLM protests are now the same people who act as if it's not their responsibility to speak up against and weed out the most undeniably vile members of their movement. That said, again, this is where the lack of nuance on the side represented by Kevin and Omar really kills their entire message and perspective. Because when you say with all the confidence in the world during a debate something that's easily disproven, you lose your credibility. Like, just imagine for a second if any one of the panelists in this debate had said, with unwavering certainty, the sky is purple, but you were just outside and the sky was blue, and just to be sure, you, after hearing the sky is purple now, you peek out of your window and see that the sky is still in fact blue, you immediately think that the person who said that the sky is purple is a liar and or an idiot. Then again, sometimes the sky, like at dawn and dusk, can have a little purple in it. But that's a nuanced thing to say. And being nuanced in a debate is becoming a lost art because it's just easier than the alternative. But in fairness to Kevin and Omar, they both acknowledged that there has been some violence and reprehensible behavior at these various campus demonstrations. However, they refused to concede that the students were ever the ones who were being violent, unless they were plants of some kind.
Or just,
damaging property.
I mean, I don't know if people having a drum circle is necessary that you need riot police for.
It's all just drum circles. That's what I've been watching for the past couple of days. Yeah.
Well, no, I've seen agitators going in there and trying to cause firing,
right. They're probably
firing fireworks at people.
Whenever somebody says something anti-Semitic, they're probably far right. They're not even left.
No, I'm not even talking about with inside the camp. I'm saying UCLA.
No, you guys are right. The lefties
you had people outside. No,
but is it not fair?
Have I ever said that they don't do anything wrong? Stop being.
They didn't do anything wrong.
Jesus
no, the cops are going to do worse. The cops are going to do worse than the protests over damaging property. Yeah, you're
already
right.
done fucking worse. They've
because they arrested
60-year-old professors.
They gave somebody anxiety by arresting them. This is worse than property damage.
They physically brutalized fucking old professors and shit.
Right.
Can I ask a question to the folks on the other side here? So I'm willing to concede all kinds of stuff to you guys. Really, I'm not the hardliner here. I just think it's fine to bring in the police to keep order. But I'm curious to the two of you, how much property damage do you think is reasonable at a protest? Again, I'm good faith. How much property damage is acceptable?
I sort of don't give that much of a fuck as long as it's not like a structural damage to a building. If it's a bit of graffiti, it can be cleaned off.
Like, at what point is somebody allowed to say you've caused enough property damage that we need to?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I would put a dollar value on any of that. To be honest with you, I mean, if they've got many millions of dollars to be spending on these horrific things in Israel, I don't see that they can't afford to clean a bit of fucking graffiti. Like for me, it's a matter of
money. Well,
for me, it's
the entire quad, right? Like,
well, to be fair, a lot of these institutions are essentially fucking wealth funds with a library. I mean, they've got a lot of fucking money, actually.
Fuck their shit
A
up.
lot of these
yeah.
organizations are. But I'm saying the idea that the police are going to go in and do less damage is an interesting
To
notion,
property?
frankly.
Yes, they
Well,
do.
the police don't do any damage to property during any of this.
They might kick some doors in. Do you think they're going to graffiti and shit on the walls and spray paint things?
No, but they
Obviously,
probably
the
will
question-
brutalize a lot of people and escalate the situation, yeah.
Escalate the
what tends to
situation. So
happen.
the situation being human beings barring other people from using public facilities and basically.
Okay, I want to ask you, the viewer, if any of this sounds familiar. It was mostly peaceful. They were good people who were baited into doing bad things. The police were picking on the most feeble amongst the demonstrators and overreacted just because they hated the demonstrators they encountered. Or the real source of all this were plants and agitators. The media is obsessed with demonizing good people and creating false narratives about them. Stick with me because there's more to cover here, but this one has just been driving me crazy. We're going to talk about the panel's discussion related to January 6th more a bit later, but consider that to be a teaser. For now, I want to talk about another key part of Kevin and Omar's narrative, which can be boiled down to defining good guys and bad guys. In their eyes, the bad guys here are campus administration, who, according to them, aren't interested in a peaceful resolution and are not even trying to communicate with their students. Then there are cops who only want to brutalize demonstrators and escalate things, because that's all they really care about. And apart from them, you have the media and outside agitators who just want to, I guess, make the demonstrators look bad. The good guys, of course, are the students, the demonstrators. But it's more specific than that. We've already gone over the mostly peaceful part of this, but I want to drill down into a particular part of the framing of this debate by the side represented by Kevin and Omar, which wasn't called out by principals or counterpoints, but I think it's important to talk about. And that is that the demonstrators are consistently referred to as kids. This is a deliberately misleading framing of the principal actors in this whole debate, and a framing that is factually inaccurate. And while it may seem like unimportant semantics, it's not. Let me explain. Whether the campus demonstrators are viewed as kids or adults is an important choice for an observer to make. I mean, think about it. Are these demonstrations aimed at persuading actual children of anything? Is the goal to strike up thoughtful conversation at the local elementary school? No, of course not. They're aimed at sending a message to adults. And if you are one of those adults, why on earth would you care about the geopolitical musings of misbehaving spoiled children? You wouldn't. So if the demonstrators want to have their message and demands taken seriously, they must be viewed and treated as adults. So then why are they so often referred to as kids? It seems pretty obvious to me, because by slipping in references to them being kids here and there, and often using kids interchangeably with students and protesters, even if these protests have oftentimes devolved into riots and occupations, more innocent phrases like kids and students and protesters, it gets everybody involved, all of the good guys, it gets them all off the hook when they aren't acting like adults. After all, kids are innocent. So it couldn't possibly be the students causing any of the serious problems we've seen. Kids, as we know, aren't born racist or anti-Semitic. So there couldn't possibly be any of that going on here. Kids also, they don't know any better, so they break the rules. It's a part of being a kid, so they shouldn't be held responsible like they would if they were an adult. Kids are also fragile and feeble, so if they break the law, engaging the police would be just totally overdoing it. It goes on and on. But the fact of the matter is, I could say, all right, which are they? Kids or adults? You have to pick one. But that wouldn't be right either, because we all know that none of the demonstrators are kids. They're adults. Young adults, sure, but adults nonetheless. And if you want to have your grown-up ideas taken seriously by the rest of us grown-ups, you need to stop acting like kids and pretending that you are one. And the same goes for the people who are carrying water for these people. If you want us to take them seriously, then you need to stop referring to them as kids, because they're not. And all this leads us to the part of the debate that I frankly found the most interesting, which was when the panelists started to discuss the parallels between these campus demonstrations and the January 6th insurrection.
Reasonable way than if you have riot police wading into a group of 1,000.
So do you think that the police should have been called during the January 6th protests when the protesters were occupying the Capitol building?
They were
Can I say something, Wick?
Yep,
I think
now's your chance to shine. Then we're going to go to principals, and then.
I think that's shameful that you compare January 6th to the students in Colombia. The January 6th, they were trying to overthrow the government of the United States. Hold on, you cannot compare what's going on in Colombia. These are what happened on January 6th. That is the craziest shit I ever heard. You're going to give it to some idiots in Columbia College who are eating potato chips.
The idea that these two things are comparable is fucking nonsense.
They are comparable. There's different scales, but they are comparable.
Now, Kevin and Omar's reaction of the very idea of drawing parallels between these two mass demonstrations, if you want to call them that, was very unsurprising. What was a little surprising to me was that neither counterpoints or principles really leaned into it that much when the parallels are so painfully obvious and plentiful. And more so from a debate standpoint, when you actually go in and inspect any of these parallels and examine how people like Kevin and Omar, as well as, by the way, the same media elites that Kevin and Omar villainized throughout this debate, how those people, Kevin, Omar, and the media elites, how they all thought we should respond to the J6ers, well then every pillar of Kevin and Omar's dismissal of the apparent downsides of the campus demonstrations instantly crumble. So, since counterpoints and principles didn't break that part down, allow me to. One of the most common defenses I'm sure you've heard of January 6 participants by those on the right who might acknowledge that there was a lot of bad stuff that went down that day. The most common defense will go something like this. Okay, I mean, maybe they did some bad stuff. Okay, I'll give you that. But when you think about it, everyone there genuinely believed that they were leading a very righteous cause. They really believed that they were the brave few who were saving America from a corrupt group of elites who stole an election. So they thought they were doing maybe bad things for the best of reasons. So I don't think that we really need to come down on them as hard as we have been. And that same defense of the campus demonstrators has been impossible to miss too. Then there are some other more direct, in-your-face parallels that props to Wick, he pointed out.
It was a
Both
different
groups occupied
animal
a
in
building.
26.
Both groups
No,
had portions of the crowd who were calling for the
was
death
the
of
government?
others.
Hold on. Was the whole government of the United States stuck in Columbia College?
No, but I
yesterday?
think the government should protect its normal citizens,
Do
not
you
just its
think?
politicians.
You know what have happened if they had got to those senators and those congressmen? Imagine what was going
I'm
to happen if they killed.
absolutely clear, and I think that what happened to the January 6th
Can I ask-
protesters should have
They were
happened to
trying
the
to
January 6th
prevent.
protesters.
They were trying to prevent the
Sure, I
passing
agree.
the peace. They were trying to prevent the
I agree, it was
peaceful.
bad.
And I
The
thought-
organizer of the protest said that he did not deserve, the Zionists did not deserve to live, and that we
Okay,
should
when you say
thank
the
him.
organisers of, is this the
And what
guy who's
happened?
been-
What happened? They suspended him and kicked him out,
He got
right?
expelled.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
good.
So-
We agree
But there
with
were
that.
other
The
people,
system
and I
actually
can
worked on that
link you.
occasion.
I can link you the clips
system
at
worked on
Columbia
that
of
occasion.
people calling
I
for
don't know, you know
death.
what?
You had people
I don't
violently
know
break
why-
into the Capitol building with the verbal intent to murder the sitting Vice President of the United States. Having people chant from the river to the sea, which is at least ambiguous, some people might be anti-Semitic with it, I think a lot of people are not, is a significantly different and lower scale situation.
Sure.
Okay?
But of course, instead of engaging in it with a fair comparison, Kevin and Omar acted like you can't possibly compare these two things because they're not exactly the same. As if a comparison is something you do with things that are identical. But beyond that, one of the most sad parallels that I've seen that wasn't discussed in the debate, and I haven't really seen discussed anywhere, is the idea of shared martyrdom between the campus protesters and J6ers. The people who stormed the Capitol did so for Trump. They were sacrificed by Trump. And for what? Literally nothing. They didn't save democracy because there wasn't anything to save it from, except maybe themselves. Because instead of saving democracy, what they actually did, if anything, was harm it. Some might argue seriously. And their reward for that was what? In countless instances, a criminal record, and I guess a few conservative talking heads and the man himself celebrating their righteous sacrifice. That's it. They were turned into martyrs for nothing. But where this gets sad is that countless student demonstrators, and many more students who aren't affiliated with the demonstrators one way or another, are having their futures harmed and sacrificed too. And for what? I bet there are a lot of people shouting at their screen right now. They sacrifice themselves for a righteous cause. Yeah? If it's so righteous, why aren't you sacrificing anything? Why is it always the ones with the brightest futures, the most to lose, the young and maybe naive, who are always the ones expected to sacrifice themselves first, and no one else? Unless you're a child or child-minded, you know how this is going to end for these students. Nothing good is going to come to them from their righteous sacrifices. And worst of all, the ones who are sacrificing them aren't doing it for a righteous cause at all. They're doing it for themselves. Much has been made of the anarchist playbook that's been recently uncovered and confirms what experienced community and campaign organizers like myself have known for a long time. These are not organic uprisings we're watching. They have had, from the very beginning, all of the hallmarks of being organized by the most bombastic but ineffectual political operators in the world. And they're following the same playbook that they developed first in the days of Occupy Wall Street, which led to nothing, and that was then used to hijack and eventually kill the Black Lives Matter movement. There are those who will say that these campus demonstrations are evidence that things are just getting started for the pro-Palestinian cause in America. But I promise you, now that we know who's really pulling the strings of these occupations, encampments, and protests, it's already over. It's over for the movement, and worst of all, it's over for any of the potential good that may have had the potential to come out of these demonstrations at one point, before they were effectively handed over to people who wanted to really make it a look at me exercise instead of a look at this, listen to our message exercise. If you're sympathetic to the core viewpoints of these demonstrators, That's the real tragedy here. This isn't the start. This is the beginning of the end. How do I know this? Because I'm Old Man Laundry, that's how. And because experience isn't everything, but it's a big fucking something. And when you've got none, like Kevin, Omar, and the crowd they represent, you're never going to be able to see what's around the next corner until you've got eyes to see it. And you'll never get that until you stop pondering and pontificating and spend a year or 2 or 10, like I have, deep in the weeds and the trenches, doing this shit for real. So that is my debate review of this topic. But I still have some questions for you before you go. Do you like this new format? How do you think I did? Do you want to see more debate reviews? And if you do, what debate should I break down next? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And please, if you like the video, drop a like and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. That's it for me. I'll catch you guys in the next one.